Yeah, there are obviously different traditions in Saam acupuncture, but one of the major forces is what Kim Hong-yong introduced. And he actually started teaching Saam acupuncture in the 80s after he found in some antique bookshop just one of the scripts of Saam and started just using the system. And he took many, detours and many steps to clear up the system for himself and make for himself an idea to make it logical and enrich it actually with a lot of more information.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. Mastery is such a curious thing, and I think people have written and explored this perhaps since humans recognized that some people are better at certain things than others. Seems to me mastery is something that is lived into. You can't buy it with an education. For sure, you can't lean on some AI to do your thinking for you. Mastery comes, if it does, through a paring away of what's not essential, of attending to what is and allowing yourself not to be constrained by the worship of consistency. I'm not advocating for recklessness either. Mastery, it seems to have an elegance to it. Not that it seeks to be elegant, but it's a quality that arises naturally when you see the simplicity within complexity, when you know what not to do and don't do it. There are no maps that will for sure get you there. It can't be flow-charted. It's usually somewhat idiosyncratic, frequently misunderstood, and perhaps even at a younger age, a source of ridicule, irritation, or obsession. It's like there's something that keeps expanding out that you can't quite let go of. It has both a feeling of attraction and maybe with a sense of danger. You need the danger part because in anything worthwhile, there are consequences if you're not paying attention. Mastery means you'll strike out on a road different from your most influential teachers. It's not that you're destined to be a heretic, but for sure in adding how you paint to the repertoire of what's come before, it won't quite fit in. Mastery shows itself in different ways. It could make you quieter or louder, depending on your character. I suspect mastery means that you've tapped into your essence, that unique constellation with which you were endowed when you entered the world. For sure, it will not be pleasing to everybody. You'll need to be able to withstand the heat because the fires of transformation, they always burn hot. There's also this fetish we have in our trade of worshiping and seeking to become a master. That, air quotes here, spirit level practitioner who looks and knows. I don't know. I'm still working on becoming a solid journeyman practitioner, a reliable artisan. Perhaps because it allows me to be the tool. There's a satisfaction in that, and having a skill that adds value in the marketplace of the 10,000 things, it makes for an engaging and interesting day's work. I think about the people I know that are really good at what they do. All of them, they share a common trait. They're persistent. They just don't stop. When something comes along that they don't understand, instead of complaining that things are hard, they get curious about how to solve the riddle. I used to think mastery was due to a kind of talent, but I think it's more about having a solid understanding that does not get in the way of learning something new. You know the methods well enough that you develop a kind of knack, which can look a lot like talent, but because it's forged rather than given, it has a kind of gravity to it. Andreas Brüch has been working with Saam acupuncture for a couple of decades now. It started with an interest in Korean hand acupuncture and some frustrations with understanding that system. Then when he listened to a talk on Saam acupuncture, he saw the potential for answering the questions that the hand acupuncture system had brought to mind. He's been working with and learning from Korean doctors ever since. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, you'll know that there are some curious aspects of Saam acupuncture that have had my attention for a couple of years now. I'm always keen on exploring more about this unique method that gave us the 4-needle protocol, a curiously potent set of yin-yang organ pairings, and a diagnostic system that is rooted in the classics and readily applied in everyday clinical work. We'll get into this in a moment. Stay with us. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AccuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit AccuFastNeedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Andreas Brüch, welcome to Qiological.
Yes. Hello, Michael. Nice to be back again.
Great to be seeing you and talking with you. You know, originally, we had a conversation here on Qiological. It was way back in February of 2020, episode 128. We were talking about Saam acupuncture. Since then, You recently presented at a geological Chautauqua that we had on Saam acupuncture. It's rather interesting to me, this Saam stuff. It's been kind of a fringe sort of treatment, a fringe way of thinking and working. It comes from Korea, not so much in the mainstream, if you could say Chinese medicine has a mainstream, but, kind of off to the edges. But it's something that you've been working with for a long time. And so I'm delighted to have you here to talk about this method because more and more people are talking about it. Increasingly, people are using it. Toby Daly here in the United States has taught quite a few people, which has got some folks up and running. And I believe you've been doing some teaching in Europe as well. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's correct. I started teaching 2015 in Germany here.
Yeah. So that was a while ago. Give us a little background. What got you started with this?
Well, at first I studied or I learned Korean hand acupuncture. So from 2002, I forget, I start forgetting the dates. Anyway, from 2002, I went 4 times to Korea to get the Korean hand acupuncture training at the institute of the founder of this method, Dr. Yu. And I finished the whole program that usually the Korean therapists do. And at the end of this program, I was a little bit dissatisfied with especially the diagnostic methods of this Korean hand acupuncture. And then my first teacher for Saam acupuncture, Dr. Chu, came to the TCM Congress in Germany, in Rothenburg. It's the biggest Chinese medicine congress in Europe. And he presented just for 3 hours there about Saam acupuncture. And as I knew that in the Korean hand acupuncture, the most upper or advanced level of Korean hand acupuncture is actually using the theory and logic of Saam acupuncture 4-needle treatment and just transfers it to those points on the hand. I was very interested in the Saam acupuncture, and his presentation back then solved so many questions in just 3 hours I had about this method. So just the weekend after, or the week after, the Monday after I heard his presentation, I started switching to Saam acupuncture, and it became more and more. And I got deeper and deeper into this method, and I ended up going, quite frequently to Korea and trying to find teachers there and learning from Korean Oriental medical doctors directly in Korea. That's how it all developed.
Yeah. I remember studying some Korean hand acupuncture when I was in acupuncture school. It was one of those things offered to us as a kind of microsystem, a way of maybe adding a little more something to a treatment that you were already doing. But we were thinking of it very much in TCM styles, ways of thinking. And I remember learning, I can't say I learned. I remember being exposed to the 4-needle technique when I was in school. I think many of us were. It was cool. It's this chi transfer using the 5 phases. It sounded great. I never actually understood it. I mean, I remember being told about it, but anytime I tried to do it, I'd always get really confused. Like by the time I got to the 3rd needle, I had no idea what I was doing. So I just stopped using it. For me, it was when I started to learn the diagnostics behind Saam, as it was taught to me by Toby Daly, that it began to make a world of sense.
Yeah, that's...
So the one of the things that I really caught into with the Saam system, and it blows my mind all the time, and that is the way the organs are paired together. I mean, it was like a lightning bolt when I first saw it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is the major mechanism of the system that is in those balancing meridian idea. As you said, you were exposed to it in school, which is good. I mean, because here in Europe, it's kind of unheard of. I don't think that it's so far mentioned in a lot or in any of the basic training in normal acupuncture, at least in Germany. So I'm kind of it seems like I'm like if I am or I was the first guy who really got deeper into it and just really is using it professionally every day. There might be some Koreans here in Germany that use it, but it's not well known in a large scale, and it's really a very exotic way to view meridians and energy, I think, compared to what the other people here are doing.
It's one of those things, and we've talked about this a bit at the Chautauqua, and especially some of the folks that presented on the history. It's a little bit unknown, like where that idea came from. I mean, the way the organs are paired at this point is considered part of Saam acupuncture, but who came up with that, when that actually became a piece of the system, it's a little bit shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, I remember that discussion, and actually I don't know myself, but I will go on and ask some of my teachers in Korea. They will know. So I cannot really solve this question at the moment. But my first teacher, Dr. Chu, he was just mentioning this. And it might have been Kim Hong-kyung who introduced it, but actually I don't really know. So I should ask some of my teachers, because they are really qualified to answer this. So we might even ask Dr. Lee in the last presentation of the Chautauqua. He surely will be able to answer that question, I think.
We'll see. Yeah, we can try that. Regardless of where it came from, it's an incredibly brilliant pairing. And for people who are not familiar with this, tell us a little bit about what the Saam pairs are and how they differ from the traditional pairings that we're so familiar with from our textbooks and from our practice.
Yeah, the Saam pairs actually are in the logic of the combination of the 6 Qi and the 5 elements. So it's not a yin-yang pairing. It's just this climatic energy that is the 12 main meridians get their individual climatic energy from the combination of the 6 Qi, which are Tai Yin Yang Ming, Shao Yin Tai Yang, Jue Yin and Shao Yang, and every of these 6 climatic energies are paired for every meridian with the 5 element reference for all the 12 meridians, or the Zhangfu. And in pairing these two, we get a very individual climatic energy. And the pairing actually is quite logical and quite, I think, easy to understand, because it's just the opposite energy of 2 meridians that always balance each other. You know? Like dampness and dryness balance each other, and heat and cold balance each other, and the Jue Yin inward moving cold wind, and Shaoyang outward moving light. At least that's the way it is defined in the tradition of my acupuncture style of Dr. Kim Hong-kyung. So it's basically these 6 energies that are balancing each other. In that way, we can apply them clinically.
So when I first was learning this system, it seemed apparent to me that the language that we use in TCM, in some ways, how do I say this? Let me backtrack a little bit. The language we use in TCM sometimes isn't that clear.
You think so?
But the herbal medicine, the way of thinking with herbal medicine, it's abundantly clear. So let me give you an example. We're talking about like dampness and dryness counterbalancing each other. Okay, so in TCM, we think about the spleen as being the organ that likes dryness. We talk about the spleen likes to be dry, right? So if the spleen has a problem, we use very drying herbs to help it out. But the thing is, in Saam acupuncture, we look at the spleen, and the spleen, because it's Tai Yin, that has to do with dampness, and it's earth, that has to do with dampness. It's like the wettest, it's the dampest meridian of the body, right? It's all about dampness. And then, quite often we think about spleen, stomach, but in the Saam pairing, it's spleen, large intestine. Now, large intestine is Yang Ming, which is considered dry, and metal, which is considered dry. It's like as dry as you can get. But if somebody has a problem with, say, digestion and there's too much dampness, we call it spleen deficiency, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not enough spleen. But from Saam's way of thinking, it's actually a spleen excess. And all the herbs that we would use to treat a spleen excess are herbs that are drying, parching, and draining. And so from a herbal point of view, the Saam organ pairings are abundantly obvious to me. They're a little less obvious when doing acupuncture. And again, it's the way that we've learned it. I'm not saying TCM is wrong. It's different languaging to look at different phenomena.
Yeah, that's always with different systems or styles of Oriental medicine. I think everyone has its own specialty, and they are in some extent different, but in some extent they overlap. So we really have to figure out how to deal with that, and it takes some time actually to be able to manage, as you said, this seemingly counter or obvious overlapping, but then it's also a little bit different. And that's actually what I think is a little bit challenging in Saam acupuncture, that to some extent if we also practice herbal medicine, we have to think in two kinds of system, other than if you practice like standard TCM acupuncture, because you take those diagnoses that are simply the same for acupuncture or very much the same and in herbal medicine. So that is the challenging thing, I think, a little bit in Saam acupuncture. You got to get it figured out, and it takes a while. So the solution for me is usually thinking in like I'm making two kinds of diagnosis for a patient. One is for my Saam acupuncture, and one is when I think about the herbs. And in that sense, I try to avoid the problem you just mentioned. Actually, other people might do it differently, but I think it's not so weird to do it in that way, because my Korean teachers, they usually practice another kind of herbal medicine. Most of them are using sasang, so this Korean for constitution herbal medicine approach, which is again different from Saam acupuncture. So they also have to think in two ways about their patient. How do I treat my patient with acupuncture, and what kind of herbal diagnosis will I use? Because sasang herbal medicine is even more different approach. So I think it's we have to face that challenge in some way.
That makes sense to me. And in addition to that, I think any of us that live in the West and grew up with Western medicine, and we live in a world of Western medicine all around us, we're also thinking Western medicine diagnoses. We're also thinking Western physiology at the same time that we're thinking of our acupuncture or we're thinking of our herbs. So it's not unusual for us to be looking through several paradigms at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. So it's actually three different kinds, yeah, right? And the most confusing to me mostly is the Western medicine diagnosis, because I myself still tend to consider that too much. I remember one of my first acupuncture teachers in school, he said he is performing best if he completely disregards the biomedicine diagnosis and only thinks about, whatever, Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine categories, because then he can really rely on the system. But it's hard to not, or to disregard the Western diagnosis, I think. I don't know about other practitioners, but it's a process to become more and more confident about what are we doing in Oriental medicine, I think.
Mm-hmm. I found a similar thing. There was a period I went through, I would just ignore the Western diagnosis because it was distracting to me. At this point, I don't ignore it, but that's just because Western medicine is the language that my patients speak. And so in an attempt to communicate with them in a way that's effective through the metaphors and framework that they're already thinking, I try to be able to describe what I'm doing in terms that they might understand from a Western point of view.
Yeah, I agree.
And I use it strictly for that. I don't really use it for diagnosing, and especially for like psycho-emotive issues. I mean, you've got a background in psychology, So you understand some of this stuff. But man, I've got patients that come in and they go, well, I'm anxious. And I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's easy for my Western mind to think I understand what's going on for them because, well, we all know what anxiety is, don't we? But actually, no, I don't know what anxiety means for them.
Yeah, psychological conditions are even more complicated. Well, what I can say is I admire actually the Korean doctors because their training is very much integrated of Western medicine and Korean medicine actually. So I admire one of my friends I went so far 3 times to his clinic to watch his treatments. He's like he's like a walking dictionary of Korean medicine and Western medicine interrelationship. So he talks about an acupuncture point, and he will start just speaking about the biomedicine studies, what this point is, what kind of effect this point has. Or he would start speaking about individual herbs and their biomedicine, biochemical effect. And he told me he's largely using this message to communicate with his patients because they will understand if he says, whatever, this herb will boost your immune system, or this herb will, increase your red blood cell count and whatever. Or this acupuncture point is actually clearing, having an effect on the change in the blood pressure and so on. And it seems like this is standard in Korea. They know so much about the interrelationship of actually modern research and the traditional idea about their medicine. My friend actually has a kind of a diagnostic machine in his clinic where he can, in English, how can I explain this? He can film or photograph the body's temperature. So if he's doing some treatment with acupuncture, he can have a before treatment and after treatment picture of the.
Oh, I think I know what that's called. Yeah.
Heat radiation, and he can really show to his patients, you look, your shoulder problem before, your shoulder was not very well, the blood circulation was not very good, and he shows after the treatment. And so he can prove actually after one treatment or after a treatment, show his patients what is really happening in the body. And it's just great because it gives so much more credibility than if we speak about something more esoteric like your chi or your energy. He's just showing the picture, and say, look, I have treated you and now the circulation in whatever your part of your body has improved. And in that way, he also can give a prognostic information. Okay, he can justify to his patients that he will need a certain number of more treatments just to fix the whole problem really deeply. So wonderful. So they have all kinds of very interesting diagnostic machines for Korean medicine that we don't use. I mean, I don't know about the United States, but in Germany, because they have to undergo European Union and German medical law procedures, those machines are just not available. Too bad, actually. Too bad.
So I'm a little familiar with these machines. I think it's called thermography.
Yeah, thermography, sorry, yeah.
And it's often used for different kinds of diagnostics. I know it's used to some degree. This is a more alternative use of it. But like checking for breast cancer, they'll do thermography of the breasts, and they'll be able to see things like early on because you're seeing changes in temperature before you're seeing more objective changes in tissue. So there's that. I think it's considered a little bit woo-woo here in the States, not used so much by conventional medicine. But certainly from our point of view as acupuncturists, man, that'd be a great thing to have to help us understand how things are working. I mean, we are working with chi, and you would think it would leave a trace that way. So maybe at some point our iPhones will be able to do that for us.
Yeah, might be someday.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, well, there will be a lot of progress. But there's much more of such kind of instruments and machines they are using. Not everybody uses the same. Some run their clinic very traditional. But, every time I'm there, I really envy those guys. Yeah? Some of them, for example, have this tongue photograph device where you put your head in, and the lightning to make shoot a picture of the tongue is always under standardized light. So they really can immediately compare to the textbook tongue, or compare the change in the tongue. And it's really, it's standardized. So it's wonderful. But I cannot use it here in Germany. I cannot import it. It's just prohibited.
Too bad. It's so interesting. On one hand, it sounds like the Koreans have some fantastic technology. They're using cutting-edge technology, really. On the other hand, extremely traditional.
Yeah, you're right. I think so.
So you mentioned Kim Hong-jong, who I've just recently started hearing about again. I've learned Saam through Toby, through a monastic tradition. I haven't really poked my head up to see, what else is going on until recently. But the people that have had some study in Korea, like yourself, or are familiar with it, it sounds like Kim Hong-jong has been an incredible, I was going to say force, but not a force. It's like, I don't know, tell me a little bit about him. He's somebody that a lot of people will reference, and it sounds like he really brought Saam acupuncture into the modern moment, or revived it in some way. Tell us a little bit about this guy.
Yeah, there are obviously different traditions in Saam acupuncture, but one of the major forces is what Kim Hong-yong introduced. And he actually started teaching Saam acupuncture in the 80s after he found in some antique bookshop just one of the scripts of Saam, and started just using the system. And he took many, detours and many steps to clear up the system for himself and make for himself an idea to make it logical and enrich it actually with a lot of more information. So he, for some time, he became a Buddhist monk and studied with one of the very important and famous Buddhist abbots in Korea. And so he enriched his Saam acupuncture with a lot of information coming from a Buddhist background. And he had also a teacher for the I Ching, and he got major information or major impulse for developing his system by studying the I Ching and connecting the I Ching with the 6G 5-element climatic energy. And so he was, in the beginning, he was a very disregarded in the Korean medical community, because he really was like a rogue doctor, not following the standard system. And he made up his own ideas and started teaching university students and young Korean doctors. And for, I think, about 20 years, he ran like a Saam or Korean medicine boot camp every year, where students and young doctors were having a 30-day Oriental medicine boot camp, where he was teaching continuously for 30 days. And in that way, he spread his system. And later he became also a TV personality. So for some years he ran frequent TV shows where he explained to the general public about Korean medicine and, the philosophy behind it, and about Saam acupuncture. So he was really a very, very well-known person in Korea. He deceased February 22, actually. And I think he wrote, I don't know the exact number, 18 books on Korean medicine. And Saam acupuncture really took off when, with his first major publication, that actually was nothing else but that his students from this boot camp put together, structured and formalized his oral teachings into a book, which is called Revolution of Oriental Medicine. And this is when he became step by step very famous. And I'm very sorry that except one of his books, none has been translated to English. And somebody should at least translate this revolution of Oriental medicine to English. That would be a very good resource for us all, I think.
That sounds like a great project for somebody who knows Korean.
Yeah. I think all these things will be much easier in the future with artificial intelligence, because it's getting better and better. And I really recently just used Korean articles and put it to ChatGPT, and I saw that the translation was really very good and correct. I mean, you have to really still have an eye on it, but if you know the subject, you can judge, is this nonsense or does it make sense, the translation? And it helped me a lot recently to understand some finer details.
Yeah. Now, did you have a chance to study with him, or you studied with his students?
Yeah, I studied with Dr. Chu Yong-ong, who is one of, as I was told, actually, of the 3 master students of Kim Hong-kyung. And Dr. Chung is currently the vice president of the Korean Saam Acupuncture Association. And he was very deeply involved with Kim Hong-kyung. So I'm very fortunate to be able to go and study with that person.
For sure.
I'm really very thankful.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. You know, what a world we live in. Look, you live in Germany. I live here in the United States. That we live in a time where medical traditions like this can be available to us. And we've got the capacity to travel. We've got the ability to, go into other cultures, learn something, bring it back to, the place where we live and practice. It's really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, so many things have changed, actually. The first time when I wanted to go to Korea and study hand acupuncture, it took me about 2 years to find a teacher who was, my first hand acupuncture teacher, she actually was speaking German. So it took 2 years of asking people and trying to, networking and finding contacts to find anybody who was either teaching in English or German, until finally I had a start. And from that point, I think there's a younger generation of Korean Oriental medical doctors who can speak English well, and in that sense are qualified to teach us. That was not the case, I think, in the beginning of the 2000s. Still, it was very hard to find somebody
Yeah, things really change.
But we will have some of those people teaching at the Chautauqua, like Professor Lee Sang-hoon and Dr. Lee Chung-hwan. So very fortunate, actually.
Yeah, super lucky.
That we can listen to their talk, yeah.
Now, are you still using Korean hand acupuncture as part of what you do? Is that part of your way of working these days, or was it more of a stepping stone?
Very, very seldom nowadays. I use it sometimes if I think, there's this correspondence system. It's actually the most basic level of the Korean hand acupuncture system, where the whole body is mirrored or on the hand, and you can check certain parts of the hand when they reference to a certain part of the body, and just treat it if this spot is sensible. So I'm sometimes doing this, but actually very seldom nowadays, because I try to rely on Saam acupuncture as much as possible. But it has also very good effects, and sometimes very astonishing effects actually also. Like I remember one patient who had a chronic ear infection, and I gave her like a homework to burn moxa on the corresponding point of her ear. And she told me every time she was burning, she was using the moxa, the sticky moxa cones, her ear would, some of the pus would drive out of her ear when she just burns the moxa on her middle finger. So very weird, and fantastic results also sometimes.
Wow, that's extraordinary. Now, you're mostly using Saam acupuncture. What does a treatment look like for you? I know that when I began, I was very keen on choosing to treat one channel on one side, and especially as a beginner, that's all I would do. In part because I wanted to prove to myself this stuff really worked the way that, I think it might work, and partly too because treating one channel on one side, it's one message to the body. It's not several messages. And so if people got a good result, I could see clearly what happened. If people got a bad result, I could see clearly what happened. I didn't have to guess, was it this, was it that, was it the other thing?
Yes.
Of course, as time goes on, you start to understand how things work. Often you'll add things in. But I'm curious for you, what does treatment look like?
Well, I think it's a little bit divided. Let's say about 30% of my treatments will be choosing one 4-needle point combination and adding on the other side of the body additional points that come from just another logic, like TCM acupuncture points or Archer symptomatic reactive points, and adding moxa to it and so on. So the basic treatment strategy will be one Saam 4-needle acupuncture treatment. And maybe, I would say the other, what did I say? 30%? The other 70% will be a combination of several Saam acupuncture strategies, and maybe added a few other points, like not using one, using one for treatment needle strategy and adding of a second treatment strategy 2 or 3 needles, and maybe of a third or 1 or 2 needles. And also supplementing this with reactive points, treating pain syndromes and something. And actually I'm using a lot of, I think compared to other acupuncturists, I'm using quite a lot of moxa. I'm using a lot of rice corn moxa and cone moxa.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about the moxa and how that fits in. That sounds very Japanese to me.
Yeah, it's Japanese actually, because I didn't study Korean moxa. I also got a Japanese meridian therapy training. And actually I'm using those points as prescribed according to Japanese meridian therapy. A lot of rice corn moxa, as I said, and a lot of cone moxa. And actually pain syndromes or musculoskeletal problems, I'm treating a lot with moxa. Let's say, for example, somebody has a meniscus tear. I will use needle and moxa at the pain, at the area of the pain. Or if you have a hardened, stiffened muscle on the neck, and especially on the side of the neck where the blood vessels flow, I don't like it so much putting needles in there. So I will palpate it and search for hardened areas and use rice corn moxa. So like that. So actually, I'm quite performing some work on the body of my patients, I think. I'm not lazy with my patients.
Yeah, it sounds like you spend a lot of time with them. You don't just put in 4 needles and walk out of the room.
No, I don't.
No. Now, wow. I had a little bit of meridian therapy training as well. And I remember my teachers used the rice cone moxa quite a bit. For whatever reason, rolling those little rice cones, I mean, I like receiving that moxa, but man, that's a lot of work to do it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but you get when you are getting better, it's just fast. So
you just have to work at it to get faster and better.
Yeah. I have like 15 years of practice doing this now, and I'm really fast doing it. So I can apply like every 10 seconds, I can apply one small rice corn moxa cone. I'm really fast, like 5 or 6 in a minute. It's no problem.
Wow. Okay. I always worry about burning patients and then getting really upset.
Yeah, no, I don't burn them. They just feel it. There is no blister. There is nothing. It's just practice. So I know exactly when to stop it. So it will just have this heat, heat stimulation. But in very, very seldom cases, patients have a small blister. But that's all. Nothing really happening. Even the Koreans, they told me that they don't use it anymore in Korea today in many clinics because the patients complain that there is a blister and that there will be a small bleeding sometimes. And I told them, no, if I do it, I don't. There is nothing. It's okay. And they wondered, how do you do it? I said, it's very mild.
Yeah. Well, it takes practice, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You have to build up a certain level of skill.
Yes, I think so.
And, maybe I'll just have to work on that. I just remember feeling really clumsy with it, early on. And
yeah, it's a fine motor skill to roll these things very fast and then pick it off and put it on. And also I have experimented a lot. There are those moxa creams you would put on the spot so that if you're putting the rice corn moxa on a part that is maybe might fall down because it will fall down. You put some cream on it and so it will stick. And it's just skill. I think it's practice. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Practice. Now, when you're doing that moxa, are you doing this with a Saam framework running through your mind, or are you doing it with more of a meridian therapy framework running through your mind?
Well, one is just reactive points where it is painful. So I think is it Saam or is it, I don't know. It's just a symptomatic treatment in my opinion. But in Japanese meridian therapy, we got, long lists of experiential points where they figured out over probably generations for what problem, which point is good. Some are theory-driven, like normal TCM theory, and some are just really experiential points. And I just over the years took a lot of information out of that and made my own, we all have these points that we use again and again because we know it works. And that's what I'm doing actually. And I think it's not so much different from typical Korean when we're talking about rice corn moxa way to do it, because I just studied a few of the interviews of the most famous Korean moxa master, and what he showed and what he did and the points he used, it seemed to me very similar to Japanese moxa way. Kim Nam-soo, I don't know if you heard about this person.
Not familiar with him yet.
I'm not sure if he deceased. It's just such a wonderful Korean medicine story again about Kim Nam-soo. A few years ago, he was still working in his clinic while being over 100 years old. I think at least until he was 104, he was working in his clinic, treating patients with acupuncture and moxa. So he represented a style of doing Korean medicine that was like from 100 years ago. He started learning from his teacher when he was 16. So like about at that time, 85 or 90 years ago, where they didn't even have any, legal system or any standardized way of studying and getting a license and stuff. So he took all this knowledge and progressed such a long time. Very impressive, actually, I think.
Very impressive. Now, when you're treating with Saam, you're saying about 30% of the time you're 4 needles, one side. Do you find that there are certain meridian pairs that tend to go together often, where you're just treating what you see, one issue on one side, one issue on another?
Yeah, I think. Well, it's hard to say. I never have thought about this so much, actually. Pairs that go together very often. Well, from my experience, I very often combine small intestine with other stuff, I can say, because small intestine is so much related to the blood level. So if there is bleeding, if there is blood stasis, if there's blood deficiency, if there is, yin deficiency according to blood deficiency, if people are thin, so they are like a yang Ming body type, they usually also have a blood deficiency. So small intestine very often combines with other stuff, actually. I think this is one thing that happens quite often.
That's interesting. I remember one of my teachers, herbal teacher, would often, in many formulas, put in a little extra, he put in some danshan.
Danshan, oh, okay, yeah.
Danshan, right? Because it nourishes the blood, it moves the blood. And he's just like, for so many problems, there's some issue with the blood. I just throw in some danshan and...
Right.
It's another way to say I would tonify the small intestine.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, in many formulas, there are herbs for the blood, right? So it's not so odd to use, if you're talking about Saam acupuncture, blood-related point combination or points. Yes, I think so. Yeah, and what I'm, very often using, but this is not orthodox Saam acupuncture. I'm using a lot of these points from this added Saam acupuncture system of Kim Hong-kyung, Sambu acupuncture, where you, instead of using the 4 needles, you supplement the strategies of Saam acupuncture and other things with individual needles. I very often use points that will tonify Yang Ming, so that will dry up, because obviously many people are overweight in Western society. So it's good for them to tonify metal, actually, or Yang Ming. So I'm using this very often.
Okay. So for those who are not familiar with what Sambu is, give us a little background.
Yeah. Kim Hong-kyung introduced, or he made a special theory about the shu transport points that we are also using for Saam acupuncture. And his theory or idea, which he started to introduce in the 1980s, is that each individual shu transport point has 3 5-element aspects. One is actually from the 6G, so we can relate the 6G to the 5 elements. Yeah. For example, let's say if you have points on the, let's stick with the spleen meridian. Spleen is Tai Yin, so Tai Yin corresponds, because it's damp, to earth element, and also the spleen meridian is the earth meridian. So we have 2 aspects of 5 elements in an individual acupuncture point. And if you now choose any of the 5 shu transport points, again, let's stick with the spleen on the spleen meridian. The 3rd aspect that comes into it is from the particular shu transport point. So the let's say the fire point on the spleen meridian has actually 2 aspects. It's earth and fire, because it's the Tai Yin meridian that relates to earth. It's the earth element from the spleen, and it's the fire point. So spleen 2, the fire point, is actually manipulating, or you can address 2 of the 5 elements, which it's earth and fire. So by, for example, tonifying earth 2, we will spleen 2, we will tonify earth and fire. So we can balance people who are dry and cold, for example, by tonifying earth and fire with just one individual point. And there are 3 classes of points. One class has a triple identical 5-element characteristic. For example, spleen 3. Yeah, it is earth because it's Tai Yin. It's earth because it's the earth element, and it's the earth point. So it's earth, earth, earth. And this is the first class. Those points are called Chonbu acupuncture points. And we have actually 6 of those points that address triple identical quality. And you could use these points to supplement those 4 needle point combinations that address these meridians that have a double identical climatic energy, like earth, fire, like a spleen, heart, bladder, sanjiao, and liver meridian.
I think large intestine too, right?
large intestine 2, right? So it's 6 of those pure energy, climatic energy.
Yeah, well, large intestine 1, actually.
So we could use these. And the second class of points are the Ibu points. E means 2 in Korean. So those points, our example, spleen 2, are managing 2 of the 5 elements. So we can also use these points to supplement those 4-point needle strategies that address a mixed energy, like stomach or lung or, small intestine.
Kidney,
yeah, exactly. And then we have acupuncture points that have address 3 different of the 5 elements after this logic. Example would be gallbladder 34. Yeah, it's has a wood correspondence because it's Shaoyang. It has a fire correspondence because it's a fire meridian, and it has a earth correspondence because gallbladder 34 is the earth point. So with this point, we can address problems related actually to those 2 elements that are not addressed because it's still this balancing model. So these points are called Sambo acupuncture points or Sambo points because Sam means 3. They address 3 of the 5 elements. And this is something you cannot do with Saam acupuncture because we have only pure energy and mixed energy in the meridians of 2 of the climatic energies. So this is a completely new way of treating because we can address 3 of the 5 elements with one or with individual acupuncture points.
Okay. Let me see if I understand this a bit. I mean, I get it at the level of, okay, we have these transport points. Each of the transport points, as we've learned through 5-phase theory, they've each got a different kind of energy based on where they are. We know what wood does. We know what fire does. We know what earth does. We have a sense of that. The thing I love about Saam so much, and I think this ties in with the Saam Bu here, is, now we're also looking at the meridian energetic, right?
Yes.
Let's just stay with spleen since we're talking about it, right? The spleen is earth, which kind of corresponds with dampness. It's also Tai Yin that corresponds with dampness. So in that sense, then, it seems to me that the earth point, which would be
spleen 3,
yeah, that would be the most, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to make this thing fly, that would be the most damp producing point in the body if you tonified it.
Yes, correctly. Yeah, right.
Do I have that right? So if someone's yin deficient and they're dried out, there's like yang ming excess, terrible constipation, dry skin, all the dry things you want to talk about, nosebleeds, tonifying spleen 3 could be super helpful to them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we are still thinking in a balancing model. If we find some excess, we will tonify these points to balance it.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital qi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of qi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
Now, does it work the other way around? If someone's very, very damp and we wanted to dry them out, could you disperse that point as well?
Yeah, sure. Right. So if somebody is very, very damp, you could use large intestine 1, which is Yangming metal meridian, according to the 6G. It's metal according to Zhang Fu theory, and it's the metal point. So it's metal, metal, metal. So if you want to, what was our example? Yeah, if you want to make a person a lot of more damp, we could sedate large intestine 1 and tonify spleen 3. And if you want to make him dry up very much, so we could sedate spleen 3 and tonify small intestine 1. And yeah.
Okay.
So this is, now we are thinking on a balancing, if we think about a 5-element logic, we will balance in that way just one of the 5 elements, right? Because we will do something to balance somebody who is too dry or too damp. But since there are also these Ibo acupuncture points, we could also make a diagnosis where we find excess in 3 of the 5 elements and balance it with those points that address 2 of the 5 elements. Or if you find 2 elements in excess, we could use the Sambo points because we address 3 of the non-excess elements to balance the whole system. Kind of.
That starts to get complicated in my mind very quickly. I mean, I can get...
Yeah, it does.
I mean, I can see very clearly, maybe because I think simplistically, but I can see very clearly how these points that all have the same resonance, so to speak. They could just be used as like real power hitters. I'm trying to wrap my mind around the points where, again, let's go to the spleen channel, spleen 2, that's fire and 2 earth.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. How would you bring that into play? And what's the situation where that would fit in terms of being helpful?
Okay. That means if I let's make a hypothetical example. If I tonify, it was spleen 2, right? So earth and fire. That means it's good for a case where the other 3 elements are in excess. So if I want to tonify earth and fire, if metal, wood, and water are in excess. Okay, so we can make an example of a hypothetical patient, for example. It's a thin patient that is freezing a lot and has a headache. So the headache is because he has wind or a wood excess. Freezing, he has a water excess because he's cold, and a person has a metal excess because it's a very thin person. It's a Yangming body type, thin, emaciated, maybe underweight. So for such kind of a case, in that system, in that logic thinking, it is good to tonify spleen 2 because we balance the excess of this patient with an acupuncture point that will fix these 3 excesses with 1 point. So it's a lot of 5-element thinking.
Yes, it is. It's a lot of 5-element thinking, and it sounds like a lot of clinical experience.
Yes, I think so.
Because, like you immediately went to, hypothetically, they would look like this, ... Because, you've worked with this enough that you know what corresponds to what. That to me is one of the beauties of the Saam system. It's very much about correspondence. And if you know what you're looking at and what that corresponds to, the treatment actually becomes very, very simple.
Yeah, if your diagnosis is correct and if you are sure.
If your diagnosis is correct.
But I have to admit, of course, there are many cases where I don't know exactly and where I'm confused myself. What would be my treatment with this kind of system? But actually, Dr. Lee Chung-hwan, who will present at the Chautauqua, told me last time when I was in Korea, I should not be so worried if I always have to be correct. And I think this is also a basic in Oriental medicine. We don't have to understand or break down the imbalance of the patient 100% completely. If we just break down some of the aspects, the patient will improve. So it's a fuzzy system, right? Our medicine is not digital. 0, 1. Yeah, it's a fuzzy system, and you have to get a certain understanding of what is happening there. And in that sense, for some patients, I'm very confident to use this system, and other patients, I don't know exactly. And of course, since I have several treatment options, if I'm not sure, in that way of thinking, I just leave it out. But for many patients, actually, if they are overweight, according to the Sambo 5-element thinking, they they Yang Ming because constitutional, they are too much Tai Yin. So there are really some good ideas that we could integrate in Saam Acupuncture.
I remember there was a session that we did during the Chautauqua with Sharon Sherman. We were looking at some different videos. It was very playful, like looking at videos like, okay, what is this person? Not necessarily that we're going to treat them. We weren't even necessarily looking for, air quotes, pathology. We're just looking to see what might this person be. And we're looking at one, I think it was Jane Goodall.
Yes.
Very thin. And I remember your comment about her was, well, she's clearly got a Yang Ming excess. And it just, bang, that was it. It just stood out.
Yeah.
Are there certain, how do I phrase this? Are there certain times when you're just looking at body morphology and you're not thinking about much else? Like they look like this, that means they've got that. Or is it always more nuanced? Like they've got that morphology, but they've got these symptoms?
Most times it's both, actually, because
it's both. Okay,
yeah,
I love Chinese medicine.
I try to understand the pathology according to what is the disease condition, but it's, how can I say? Well, it's not always the same. Yeah, if it's a very clear picture, you can rely more on the constitution, I think, than if it's a fuzzy way of looking at it. And well, but sometimes if patients are very chronic, and I think the normal treatment will not change so much, I think very much on this constitutional level. So, okay, let's again make an example. I recently had a patient who has the Bell's palsy, and he was very slim, thin person, a man in his 40s. Not very muscular, very thin. In German, we say leptosome. Do you know this? Leptosome? No, not in English. Okay, it's a body type that has a very thin musculature, not much underskin fat, and he was a heavy smoker, and so he, like this thin person that smokes too much. And additionally to treating his Bell's palsy symptomatical with needles and moxa in the face, I mostly tonified Tai Yin with him. So he was hot, and so he was a Shaoyin Yang Ming excess type. He was hot and he was thin. So and that was my treatment strategy, actually. Yeah, cooling and promoting earth. So tonifying Tai Yang and Tai Yin, so to say. So that would mean
tonifying Tai Yang to cool him down and Tai Yin to moisten him up.
Right. So you cannot do this with one meridian in Saam Acupuncture, right? But we have points in Sambo Acupuncture, according to the theory, that will manage this with one point. Yeah? Like, I want to tonify earth and water. So we could use spleen 9, which is the water point of the earth meridian. Or we could use bladder 40, which is the earth point of the water meridian. These are the options if you want to do this.
Wow. So I can see it. I mean, I'm not facile with it, but I hear you talk about it and I go, oh yeah, that's right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's weird because it goes even further away from, how can I say, a relationship between either a Western diagnosis or even a TCM diagnosis with the disease condition itself, because it's a step further off, I think. And this also what made it very weird for me in the beginning. But I'm using this since, when did I start with that? 2019, actually. No, it's almost 5 years now. And of course, it needs a lot of practice, but I found it adds clinical efficiency to my treatments a lot, I have to say. Because if I combine the 4-needle strategy and think in the 4-needle strategy, for example, about a Zhang Fu diagnosis, and adding 1, 2, or 3 points of this Sambo theory, thinking about the person's constitution, I'm doing two things in one treatment: balancing constitutional imbalance and addressing the disease condition directly of my patient. So I feel my treatments got more effective since then.
Yes. Well, I'm hearing a coherence here as well, Andreas, because you're using 5-phase correspondence and 5-phase interactions for both parts. You could think of the Saam treatment itself, the 4 needles, as a kind of root treatment.
Yes.
And then you're using the Sambu as ways of further promoting what you're trying to do beyond the root treatment. And if 5-phase theory and energetics are true, and I would say from my experience of working with Saam acupuncture, they're pretty powerful. I'd call it true, very useful clinical tool. Then the unique character of each of these points, relying on that same sort of coherence of working with the 5 phases, that just makes a lot of sense to me. Something, again, in theory, it sounds great. It's a great hypothesis. I'm delighted to hear you describe your work. I'm very much looking forward to investigating it myself in clinic. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does, I think. And it's just, it's completely, in my view, in the Saam acupuncture tradition. It's just a next step of development, actually. So Kim Hong-yong used the basis or the basics of Saam acupuncture and added just another layer of theory to it and made the next step with that. And I think you could combine this with, like I do, with normal Saam acupuncture. But for example, Dr. Chung in Seoul, he's only doing treatments with this. He's very seldom using some 4-point acupuncture treatment. He's just doing this.
He's just using the Sambu.
Just doing this and, adding other points or adding symptomatic treatment also, of course. But he's only into that. So it's effective also.
Wow.
But he's really I don't have his skills, of course. He has many years of experience with great teachers with this system, which I don't have. So I'm not that confident to rely only on that, I have to admit.
Well, look, these things really take time.
Yeah, of course.
We can have these ideas, and the ideas are actually beautiful. They're poetic.
Yeah.
When you come right down to it. And we can see how beautiful they are, but then making it sing and dance in clinic, that's a whole different thing. And it takes experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about experience. Yeah. It's too bad. As you wrote, there is no shortcut, I think.
There's no shortcut. But look, I think that's the good news. The good news is that there's no shortcut. We live in a world, everything is expected to be instantaneous. I'm going to get an answer from some search engine where there's a hack, to do something. But the truth is, life is not really hackable. There was a commercial years ago here in the United States for a margarine, a fake butter. Right? And people go, oh, it's delicious. It's like butter. And then, Mother Nature would come out and throw thunderbolts and go, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. It was very funny. But I think it's true. Nature takes time. It takes us time. It's one thing to have an idea, and that's important. I'm not discounting it. But to have it in our experience in a way that it's embodied so that you can look at someone and go, oh, they've got that Yang-Ming body, but they've also got these other things going on along with it, and be able to see those. Oh, that's how they're put together. Huh.
Yeah, right. And I think additionally, again, referring to Saam acupuncture, probably everybody who practices Saam acupuncture should, I think, will have that experience after some time, that some treatments work better and some treatments don't work so well, even if they are, written in the textbook, or this is the connection, and because the theory says this and that, it should work, but it doesn't. And some are working, some are better. So this is also an experience thing of experience over time. If you learn from good teachers, they might tell you, but also it's our own experience that some strategies work better and some don't work that good. And
for sure,
this is that's like you say, there is no hack to that. I think it's just experience.
No hack, no shortcut. Okay, so I got one more thing I want to, look, we could go on for a while, but I got one more thing, maybe two, that I want to ask you. First of all, move your microphone up just a tiny little bit. It just kind of fell down. Yeah, there you go. That's better. Okay, so we've been talking about the Saam organ pairs, which, I'm kind of giddy in love with at the moment because I feel like I have a superpower in being able to see them and work with them. It's a really, really cool thing, right? And, there's the other more traditional pairings. So, for example, lung and large intestine, traditional pairing. Lung and stomach, Saam pairing. Now, you were talking, and it was in Sharon Sherman's presentation. Again, I think it was Jane Goodall. You're talking about like head forward. Like sometimes people have pain when their head's forward, or sometimes just their posture. It'll tell you something about who they are. And you were talking about her in that situation, not in terms of lung stomach, traditional Saam pairing, but lung large intestine. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. All of a sudden, Andreas is back to, the traditional pairing. So it seems to me that there's times that you look at somebody or you're looking at a situation, you go, oh yeah, I can see how this Saam pairing is useful here. And there's other times you go, the traditional pairing, that's what I'm going to use.
That actually referred to lower back pain. That I was referring. And we were talking about hacks. This is kind of a hack. This is a Saam acupuncture hack. I think. It's actually also idea of Kim Hong-gyong. It's all related to the metal element. So large intestine is metal and lung is metal. And metal refers to the frame of the body, which are the bones or the joints, actually. So this is the basic idea. And
I've heard Toby talk about that.
Okay, good. So it should relate. And it means if you have a lower back pain and the pain is worse while bending forward, or let's say, for example, while working in a forward position, that means bending forward, your back is a yin movement, because the front side of the body is yin, and if you move forward, it's a yin movement. And if you have pain while doing a yin movement, it means you have a yin excess, and to balance it, we need a yang energy. And because it's all related to the metal element, to the framework of the body, it relates to the pairing of lung and large intestine. So we have to balance this yin forward movement pain with a yang, or in that example, a yang ming metal energy. So we will tonify large intestine to improve the lower back pain. And the reverse idea is just the opposite. If you have more pain while coming up from a forward bended position or overextend your spine to the back, so how can you say, for example, contracting the muscles of the lower back, or, overextending by intention your body, and that it gives more pain. It's the backward movement. So the yang movement is in excess. So that means the yang ming is in excess, and we will balance it by the yin metal meridian, and that is lung. And this is like a quick fix for lower back pain problems you could do without making further diagnosis.
Thank you. I think I can help my wife.
Try it. You could try.
With some back pain she's been having. I'm going to try it. No, you just described the situation perfectly. So I'll find out. So this is beautiful. And I want to backtrack for a second. I don't think this is a hack. It's not a hack.
No, it's not. It's pure logic, but it's a quick fix in that sense. It's not like, okay, pulse and I palpate here, where's the tension, blah, blah. So it's just, okay, where is your pain? This or that? Okay, it's more that. So I'm using just the opposite meridian. And of course, you can supplement it with other points for back pain, but the basic strategy will be or can be decided by using this logic.
I love it. And here's what I especially like about it, because I was curious again, I've been thinking in Saam organ pairs a lot. You were suddenly talking about what I consider a more traditional pairing. But as we've gone deeper into it, Andreas, you're talking about metal. You're talking about aspects of metal.
Right.
And so that means we need to focus on the metal. And in this case, Yang Ming metal would be the large intestine, the traditional pairing with the lung. What it says to me is I can have these ideas, I can have these theories. The trick is to get to the truth of what's going on. Like in this case, it's a metal problem because of their frame.
Yeah, right.
And the direction that they're moving. So it still all fits in.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice way to go between looking at the different relationships of different meridians, which I think is the key to doing Saam acupuncture. Like what's going on and what's the proper way to counterbalance what's going on to bring some relief to the patient.
Right. I think this is why I personally think this is why Saam acupuncture is, well, logic, because it's if you can put it back in this framework, then it's in my understanding it has less fuzziness than standard Chinese medicine acupuncture, where you have to know all the indications of the different points and you have so many different diagnoses, which is okay too, but the cool thing about Saam is you have this framework, and if you know how to use it, it will make things more logical or more systematic. And since I'm German, we love order and systems, so it fits. It fits actually, at least to me, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of us that practice acupuncture, we also like order, logic, and systems. We like to have a sense of how does something work. We like having that sense because we want to help people. And so we're looking for a reliable method, a reliable system that we can lean on that will help us to help people.
Yeah, right.
And wonderful. So anything else that you would like to share before we wind it down for today?
Oh, I don't know. We talked about so many things there. If you have another question, then I will try to answer. But other than that, I think we covered many things right now.
Okay. For people who might not be familiar with Saam, maybe they're just now beginning to hear about it because it's kind of emerging into the mainstream. How do you start? Where's a good place to begin?
Well, yeah. A good place to begin is what I always say in my classes is that we can exchange. Okay. You're doing just your normal Chinese medicine, let's say Zhang Fu diagnosis, and you can exchange all the points all the point lists or the collection of points you will use for all these different kinds of diagnoses. You can just exchange these points for the Saam for needle acupuncture points. So in the beginning, you can stick with your normal way of doing a diagnosis and just exchanging the points, the many, many different kinds of points. And they often come without, to me, a certain logic, because you have to memorize all the indications of individual points. And you can just exchange that with the logic of the promoting and controlling cycle principle of choosing the points according to Saam acupuncture for needle system. And this is a good way to start because you can use what you already know, and you can exchange just the acupuncture points, and in that way unburden your mind of having to memorize so many individual informations, but just use one concise logic of selecting points that is always the same, actually. This is a very good way to start.
That's great.
And even easier, as I say to those people who are in my seminars, you don't even have to memorize the logic. You just make a copy of the point lists and put it on in the treatment room, and you know what you want to treat, and then you just look on the chart and take those 4 points. It's even easier than having to know the system, the logic, and applying it every time by yourself. Does it make sense?
I love that idea. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And the reason why I like this so much, I'm a big fan of this. Take what you know that's been reliable and use that logic with this new thing that you're learning.
Right.
You're not throwing away anything.
No, you don't.
You're adding something in. It's like, okay, someone's got an issue with their loose stools, for example. And here's the things that I usually do. Well, what would that look like from the Saam perspective? And just learn to make those correlations for yourself. Maybe in the beginning, just keep treating the way you've been treating, but start making those correlations in your mind.
Right.
And then, you can add some points and see what happens.
Yeah, you're right. What personally, I think what is not so good is if you try it out a few times. Sometimes let me try it 5 or 10 times using those four needles, and then change it again, go back to your old system, and then you have to make a decision to really do it consequently for a longer time to really make an experience if this is effective or not effective. I mean, it is effective. It will help, or it will treat the patients at least the same with the same effectiveness like the other treatment. But it's mentally unburdening because there's a complete logic behind it that is always the same. But I think those people who are in my seminars and just use it a few times and then disregard it, and then maybe a few months later take out their notes and then try it 1 or 2 times again because they don't know in that case what else should they do. That is not a good way to start it. I think in general you must make a decision what is your main system and try to stick with that, and then you can add other things. And since Saam is a complete treatment in itself, it should be pursued, with consequence, and not just a little bit. And sometimes not, and sometimes yes, like that. And they don't give you experience.
100%.
In the long run.
Yeah, I agree. There needs to be a commitment.
Yeah, commitment.
I would just add one other thing to that. At least this is my experience, because I did make that commitment that I'm going to do this.
Yes.
and what I found was, if I could, I'm going to say see it, if I could see it through the Saam lens, then I would treat it with Saam. If I couldn't see it through the Saam lens, I would just keep doing what I was doing. But I still in my mind was thinking, I'm working on Saam, I'm building up this muscle, I'm learning how to use it. And, I would try to do the diagnosis. If I couldn't get it, it's like, I'm shooting in the dark. I have no idea. I just do my old thing. But if I could see it, then I would do it.
Yeah, but that relates...
Yeah, and for me, that was helpful.
Yeah, that relates actually to the Saam theory of balancing meridians, but I don't know what Toby Daly is teaching, but also you can replace every TCM diagnosis by using the 4 needle points. Okay, let's make the example. Every lung deficiency every diagnosis in TCM, you can split all diagnosis for one Zhang Fu into excess or deficiency diagnosis. So every diagnosis that is an deficiency, we can treat that particular Zhang Fu by using the tonification 4 needles in Saam acupuncture, and every excess diagnosis we can treat by using the 4 needles for sedating. Yeah? For example, liver blood deficiency, a liver qi deficiency, and so on can be treated with a tonification strategy for the liver of Saam acupuncture. And every liver excess diagnosis, liver yang rising, liver heat, liver cold, liver wind, liver fire, you can treat by using the same 4 needles for the excess condition, so the sedating strategy. So in that sense, you can stick with your old diagnosis and start using the 4 needle treatment logic.
I see what you're saying.
Without even having to apply the balancing model idea. So it covers both ideas.
Take what you know and expand it into what you're learning.
Right, yeah.
Acupuncture sure is fun, isn't it?
It is.
Well, thank you so much for your participation in the Chautauqua, for the conversation today. I look forward to talking with you more about the Sambo as I get my teeth into it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great.
All right. Well, my friend, until next time then.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoy these conversations because I'm very, I like Saam Acupuncture and I like to spread it and share that with other people. So I'm really appreciate this opportunity to speak about it. Thank you very much, Michael.
Great. You're welcome. And are you doing classes or anything like that? Do you have anything coming up?
Well, in Europe, I will go in 2 days to Switzerland to teach a class. It's just classes coming up. Yeah.
Okay. Are you teaching in English or German or what?
I can teach in German. Yeah. I usually now in Switzerland I'm teaching German, but I can also teach in English. No problem, I think.
All right. Well, I'll make sure your website's on the show notes page so people can be in touch with you.
Yeah, great.
All right. Thanks, Andreas. Till next time then.
Okay, Michael. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, next time. Bye-bye.
The 5 phases and the antique transport points have always held a fascination for me. I think it's because the generative and controlling cycles bespeak a thoughtful and useful way of considering how the competing dynamics of the different phases create the counterbalances that give rise to homeostasis. Going further into how each of the transport points is a microcosm of phase influences, as Andre talked about with the soundboard perspective, I think it's one of those things that's been right in front of me all the time, but I hadn't put it together. It seems like a coherent way of considering the character and nature of the points, in a similar way to how Saam looks at the character and nature of the channels based on the 5 phases in the 6 Qi. While it is helpful to know something of the indications for a point, doing so does not tell you about the dynamic or the underlying mechanisms that the point has on physiology. It's something I'll be investigating more as I begin to build my vocabulary in terms of the individual Sambu characteristics. I'm looking forward to seeing what I discover. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.